Imagine walking across a grassy valley about 10,000 years ago. A herd of wild cattle grazes quietly nearby. One animal has just given birth. Its calf eagerly drinks fresh milk. Now imagine a human walking toward that same animal, holding a wooden bowl. Would that person have collected milk? Would anyone have actually drunk it? Most people assume the answer is obvious. Of course, humans have always drunk milk. After all, every mammal begins life drinking it. But the truth is far stranger. For almost all of human history, adults almost certainly did not drink milk from other animals. Not because they disliked it, because they couldn't. The first humans appeared roughly 300,000 years ago. For more than 95% of that history, people lived as hunter-gatherers. They followed migrating animals, gathered fruits, roots, nuts, and seeds, hunted deer, antelope, wild cattle, and countless other species. They had no farms, no barns, no dairy herds, no domesticated cows waiting to be milked every morning. Milk existed, but it belonged to babies. Every mammal produces milk for one purpose: to nourish its young. Taking that milk was far more difficult than it sounds. Wild cattle were enormous. Their ancestors, the aurochs, stood nearly 2 meters tall at the shoulder. They weighed more than a modern car. Unlike today's dairy cows, they had never been bred to tolerate humans. They were powerful, unpredictable, and often aggressive. Approaching one was dangerous. Trying to milk one might have been suicidal. Even if someone somehow succeeded, there was another problem. Milk production only begins after birth. A mother with a newborn calf is one of the most protective animals in nature. Large herbivores routinely charge predators that approach their offspring. Early humans understood this very well. Hunting an adult aurochs already carried enormous risk. Standing calmly beneath one while attempting to collect milk would have been something entirely different. For thousands upon thousands of generations, humans probably viewed milk as something belonging to another species, not as food for themselves. Ironically, humans themselves were the exception. Every human infant depended completely on breast milk. In fact, breastfeeding shaped the survival of our species long before agriculture ever appeared. Human babies are unusually helpless compared with many other mammals. A newborn foal can stand within hours. A newborn wildebeest quickly follows the herd. Human infants require years of constant care. Breast milk became one of the greatest evolutionary investments any mother could make. It provided calories, water, antibodies, beneficial bacteria, hormones, even chemical signals that helped guide early immune development. Modern science continues discovering remarkable compounds inside human milk that researchers barely understood only decades ago. In other words, milk has always been one of humanity's oldest survival tools, but only when produced by human mothers. Everything changed only after one of the greatest revolutions in history: agriculture. Around 12,000 years ago, in several regions of the world, people gradually began domesticating animals: sheep, goats, eventually cattle. This transformation altered far more than food production. For the first time, humans lived beside animals throughout the entire year. Instead of hunting wild herds across vast landscapes, families cared for domesticated livestock every day. People observed pregnancies, births, growth, behavior. They learned when animals produced milk, how much they produced, how long lactation lasted. Slowly, an extraordinary possibility emerged. Perhaps milk could become food for humans too. The earliest evidence points not to cows, but to goats and sheep. These smaller animals were easier to manage, less dangerous, more practical for the first farming villages. Archaeologists have even found microscopic milk fats preserved inside ancient pottery dating back nearly 9,000 years. Those tiny traces tell an astonishing story. Someone was processing milk long before written language recorded a single recipe. But there was still one enormous obstacle, one that lived inside the human body itself. Even if prehistoric farmers collected fresh milk, most adults probably became sick after drinking it. Why? Because evolution had never expected grown humans to keep drinking milk. That surprising biological mystery would eventually reshape entire civilizations and even change the human genome itself. The strange twist is that the first farmers who milked their animals were probably not able to drink fresh milk comfortably themselves. Today, many people think lactose intolerance is a medical condition. From an evolutionary perspective, it is actually the original human condition. Every human baby is born with an enzyme called lactase. Its job is simple: break down lactose, the natural sugar found in milk. Without lactase, babies could not digest their mother's milk. They would struggle to survive. Nature solved this problem elegantly. Infants produce enormous amounts of lactase. But evolution expected something to happen later. Children grow. They are weaned. Milk disappears from the diet. There is no longer any need to spend energy producing large amounts of lactase. So, in most mammals, the body gradually switches the enzyme off. Humans originally followed exactly the same pattern. For hundreds of thousands of years, children stopped breastfeeding. As they grew older, lactase production slowly declined. By adulthood, fresh milk often became difficult to digest. Drinking it could cause stomach pain, bloating, gas, diarrhea. Not because the milk was spoiled, but because the body no longer possessed enough lactase to process the lactose inside it. Surprisingly, this remains true for most people alive today. Roughly 2/3 of the world's population still loses much of their lactase production after childhood. In other words, being able to digest fresh milk as an adult is actually the exception, not the rule. So why did early farmers continue collecting milk if many adults became uncomfortable after drinking it? Because they discovered something remarkable. Milk does not have to remain milk. Leave fresh milk sitting under the right conditions. Naturally occurring bacteria begin feeding on lactose. As they multiply, they convert much of that lactose into lactic acid. The result becomes yogurt. Another process separates curds from whey. The curds can become cheese. Both products contain significantly less lactose than fresh milk. Many adults who struggled to digest ordinary milk could tolerate fermented dairy much more easily. Without understanding microbiology, ancient people accidentally became brilliant food scientists. Imagine one of the earliest farming villages. A clay pot of milk sits forgotten overnight. The next morning, the texture has changed. The flavor is different. Instead of throwing it away, someone tastes it. Nothing bad happens. Perhaps it even lasts longer than fresh milk. Over many generations, simple observation became reliable technique. Some containers consistently produced better results. Certain temperatures worked best. Specific animal stomachs, used as storage bags, naturally contained enzymes that encouraged curd formation. Cheese making slowly emerged, not through laboratory experiments, but through thousands of years of careful trial and error. Archaeologists have uncovered compelling evidence for this transformation. Ancient pottery preserves microscopic fat residues that distinguish milk from meat. Some ceramic vessels even contain tiny perforations remarkably similar to modern cheese strainers. These objects date back more than 7,000 years, long before written recipes, long before cookbooks. People were already processing dairy. Milk also solved another important problem. Fresh milk spoils quickly, especially in warm climates. Fermentation dramatically extended its usefulness. Instead of wasting excess milk after animals gave birth, families could preserve valuable nutrition for much longer periods. Cheese became portable, durable, easy to transport, ideal for growing farming societies. Entire economies slowly began depending on dairy production. Yet one mystery remained. If fresh milk still caused digestive problems for most adults, why do millions of people today drink a glass of milk without any difficulty at all? The answer lies inside Dino. Somewhere between 5 and 10,000 years ago, a tiny genetic mutation appeared in a handful of individuals. At first, it probably seemed completely insignificant. But that small change would become one of the clearest examples of evolution happening within recorded human history. It allowed certain adults to continue producing lactase throughout their entire lives. For the first time, some grown humans could drink fresh milk comfortably. What happened next would permanently reshape populations across Europe, parts of Africa, and regions of the Middle East. It would become one of the fastest examples of natural selection scientists have ever discovered. The remarkable story is that humans did not simply change milk. Milk also changed humans. Most genetic mutations disappear. They appear in one individual, then quietly vanish over generations. But occasionally, A mutation provides such an enormous survival advantage that natural selection rapidly spreads it through an entire population. This is exactly what happened with lactase persistence. Instead of switching the lactase enzyme off after childhood, some individuals continued producing it throughout adulthood. That single biological change meant something extraordinary. Fresh milk became a new source of food, every single day. Imagine two neighboring farming families during a long drought. Their grain harvest fails. Wild game becomes scarce. One family owns cattle, but the adults cannot comfortably digest fresh milk. The other family possesses the new mutation. Every morning, their animals provide calories, protein, fat, water, calcium, even when crops fail. That difference may have meant the difference between survival and starvation. Over many generations, the mutation spread remarkably quickly. Genetic studies show that lactase persistence became especially common among populations with long histories of cattle herding. Today, it reaches some of the highest frequencies in Northern Europe. It also evolved independently in several pastoral populations across East Africa. This is one of evolution's most fascinating patterns. The same adaptation appeared more than once, not because people shared the same ancestors, but because they faced similar environments. Scientists call this convergent evolution. Different populations, different genetic pathways, the same evolutionary solution. It is one of the clearest examples of genes and culture evolving together. Anthropologists call this process gene-culture coevolution. Usually we imagine biology shaping culture. Here, culture reshaped biology. First, humans domesticated animals. Then they began milking them. Only afterward did natural selection strongly favor adults capable of digesting fresh milk. In other words, culture created a brand new evolutionary pressure. Our own inventions changed the direction of human evolution. That process has never truly stopped. Even today, human populations continue adapting to changing environments created by agriculture, cities, technology, and disease. Evolution did not end in prehistory. It is still quietly unfolding around us. Perhaps the greatest surprise hidden inside a simple glass of milk is that it tells two stories at once. One story belongs to animals, the domestication of sheep, goats, and cattle. The other belongs to ourselves, the evolution of the human genome. The next time you pour milk onto cereal, add cheese to a sandwich, or spoon yogurt into a bowl, remember that you are participating in one of humanity's oldest biological experiments, a practice that began only a tiny fraction of our species' history ago. For more than 290,000 years, no adult human drank fresh cow's milk. Only during the last few thousand years did dairy become a normal part of daily life for many societies. And even today, most adults on Earth still cannot comfortably digest fresh milk. Ironically, those people are not unusual. From the perspective of evolution, they remain closer to the original human condition. Those who drink milk with ease carry a relatively recent evolutionary adaptation, one that spread because culture changed the rules of survival. Perhaps that is the most fascinating lesson hidden inside every glass of milk. Human evolution was never simply about stronger muscles, sharper teeth, or bigger brains. Sometimes, history was shaped by something as ordinary as breakfast. A forgotten clay pot, a patient goat, a tiny genetic mutation, and thousands of generations willing to learn from both nature and one another. Together, they transformed milk from food meant only for babies into one of the defining foods of civilization itself.